Hello everyone, academics, ex-academics, Altax. Welcome to another episode of the Mind Your Own Revisions podcast. Today I have a very special guest, Dr. Danielle De La Mare, and she's a career wellness coach, specifically working with academics whose careers have taken over their lives. I think we are all very familiar with this notion. And she uses mainly the mind-body work, and she leads her clients through the regulation or re-regulation of their nervous system. So today we are going to talk about her story, how come she ended up as a coach, and what does compassion mean for her, because her podcast is named The Self-Compassionate Professor. And then we will dive deeper into the question of the nervous system and how do we regulate it. So, Danielle, welcome to the podcast, and thank you so much for agreeing to be interviewed by me this time on the other way around.
It's my pleasure.
Oh, I'm so happy to see you here. Like we were just talking before we started recording that we are like on the different sides of the ocean, and we can still connect and feel similar things and do similar things and serve similar people, right? So good to see you.
It's so good to see you. And it's been 6 months since we last talked. And I remember that conversation well. It was a good conversation. It felt, I think we got into some things that are so often not talked about in academia. You were talking about burnout. I remember just like, I mean, I guess I just really enjoy talking about the things that people don't want to talk about. And I also really like talking about the mind-body connection piece. And we talked a lot about that in that interview that you were on with me.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me at that time. And it's great that we can continue the conversation. But yeah, I must say that podcast with you was one of the times I was most vulnerable with my experience around burnout. So although I am someone who's trying to bring this into conversation everywhere, it's still not so easy to be so open about like everything that happened. And sky's the limit to vulnerability. Actually, we can keep exploring and go deeper and deeper.
Well, thank you for doing that. I forgot that was the first thing I think I started with. What's your story? And you were like, wow, you said something like,
where do I start?
Thanks for starting off so easily, Danielle.
Yeah, and let me ask you the same question now.
Okay.
I want to ask you whether you could tell us a bit more about your own journey, because I know that you also mentioned at that time that you also had a burnout. So whether you're able to share with us a bit like how that felt like, what happened, and then how did you end up as a career wellness coach for academics?
Right, you teach what you need to know yourself. I really believe that. Yes. Okay, so how do I even start? I will say that all through PhD school, I was addicted to work, and I could barely leave my computer. My husband would want me to go to dinner or go to a movie or, go to a little get together with friends. And that I always got panicky when he would suggest going somewhere, because that meant tearing myself away from my work. I even remember like a Christmas morning where I snuck into my home office and started working. And he came in and he's like, are you kidding me? You can't take one day off? And there was always this sort of tension around my work. And I always just thought, I like working. It's fine. Like, he needs to just get over it, right? It was that kind of feeling that I had. But continued to get worse. And when I got my tenure track job, that was like the end all be all. I was like, I have a tenure track job. I don't know. Like, that is my ultimate dream. I will do anything.
Made it.
Yes, yes. I will do anything. I will go anywhere for this thing. Well, my husband, because I was so like adamant, like, we're leaving. It's in Michigan. We live in Colorado. We're going for my job. And he had to leave his tenure track job. He was about to go up for tenure and he had to leave his job so I could take this. Which is, at the time, I mean, it was a huge sacrifice on his part. And I don't think I really gave him, I didn't give him any credit for it, you know? And I feel really bad now as I think about all of this, but it was just like it was that whole idea that my only focus was on work. And I got there, I got to the university there, I worked hard, I did all the stuff I'd always done. And it was very typical for me, shake with anxiety. But I didn't think that was, I don't know, I didn't think about it as like completely abnormal. I just, my heart, my chest would thump often. I would have shortness of breath often. It would have taken time for me to turn into myself and take care of myself and acknowledge myself. And I didn't have the capacity to create that kind of space for me. Yeah. So I, at some point, it was after my daughter was born, because I was there for the first year, and the second year I had a baby. And the second year, I really started to lose it, because I didn't just have my work addiction, and now I had a baby and my work addiction. So it was pretty bad. Oh, and I'm trying to think. And that's the moment I thought, I think I might be burned out, because I don't feel like pushing anymore. I don't feel like fighting to work anymore. I feel exhausted, and I feel shut down and paralyzed. And that's when I really started to feel it. And so then I started doing things like yoga, and then that led to meditation. And then I started taking meditation classes, and then I started teaching my students meditation. And those were great, and they helped a lot in those moments. But I didn't know how to bring that practice into my work life. So that's all it was. They were just like little breaks. They weren't like a new way of being in the world, which I've had to learn to do since then. Anyway, so I don't know, where am I on all of this?
You were feeling
you want me,
and then you were talking about, you started yoga, meditation, teaching meditation to your students and all of that. Yeah.
Okay, and so I'm trying to think. The question was about okay. It hit me in a faculty meeting one day that I didn't want to be an academic anymore. It just came out of nowhere. I was like, I think I want to be a coach. And that sounded, what? I heard that in my mind, and I thought, what are you even talking about? What does a coach even do, Danielle? What? I mean, the only coach I knew of was Martha Beck and her column in O Magazine, in the Oprah magazine. And I remember I used to read that and joke about how ridiculous she was and how ridiculous her work was. But now I suddenly felt like I wanted to do something like that. It was this like feeling of, I think, wanting to be more connected to people in a way I wasn't in my academic work. So then I got a cancer diagnosis not that much longer after that. And that's when I really started craving being connected to people. The first thing I did after I got the diagnosis, before I knew anything about what was about to happen to me, I went to Starbucks and I got a coffee in the drive-thru, and I paid for the person behind me because I just wanted to be connected to that person. And how American am I? That cracks me up that I went to Starbucks, and it's making me laugh. But anyway, I wanted to be even connected to the person behind me in the car behind me. I suddenly wanted to be in touch with my friends. I was calling them. I was wanting to be with my daughter. Normally, you know, before, when I was being work addicted, I would kind of try to push her off on my mom or anybody I could so that I could get work done. But suddenly I wanted to be connected to her. I wanted to be connected to my husband. It was just this flow of connected energy. And that Beatles song, all you need is love, love, that was just going through my head during that time constantly. I didn't know if I was going to die or not, right? Like, I had cancer and I had no idea what was going to happen to me. And I just wanted to be connected, right? Like, suddenly the things that mattered became very, very different. So then I was about to go to a mindful self-compassion training, because through my meditation work, I had found this mindful self-compassion stuff. I had signed up for it. I got the cancer diagnosis. The next week, I was going to the self-compassion training. My husband was like, don't go, you have to stay. You have to have this appointment with this oncologist. And I felt like I had to go. I was like, well, what's a week gonna do? You know, how long have I had this? A lot longer than I knew I had it. So I thought, well, might as well go. And my husband did not like it. He was so upset, but I did it. And the first, I went, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Chris Germer and Kristen Neff's work. Kristen Neff is she does the mindful self-compassion stuff. And Chris Germer is sort of like her, he's a clinician, and they work together. They created the mindful self-compassion program together. Anyway, he was the one that was leading this program that I went to. So I got the cancer diagnosis. The next week, I was at a mindful self-compassion, intense mindful self-compassion workshop. And the very first thing he said, he had us meditate. And the very first thing he said was, many of you may be going through a lot right now. And I collapsed, because I could really turn into the fact that I had cancer, and I had been, you know, pushing away my family and my friends for years. And it was just really intense. And the whole week, all I could do was, it was about being with myself for the first time ever, perhaps. Well, I guess that's not true, because I did go to a 2-day workshop, self-compassion workshop, a couple years earlier. And that was very intense and what's the word? Transformational, but not in the way this one was, because I had the cancer diagnosis and then I went for a week to this thing. And it was amazing. I journaled a ton. I spent all this time by myself and really getting connected to myself and really figuring out who I was and what I wanted to do. And that sense of wanting to be a coach became even bigger and stronger. And I had a lot that I had to do when I got home after that. You know, I had surgeries, I had all sorts of things that I had to deal with. But I knew at that time I wanted to be a coach, and I knew how I wanted to at least start the next step if I were given the opportunity, the gift of life, so that I could do the next step. I just wasn't sure if I was going to have that or not. So yeah, that was a really, really long answer.
That was a great answer. And thank you for your openness and for sharing these with us. It's really, something like a wake-up call, right? Many of us go through life like this, especially in academia, and then something like this happens, or we lose someone, or we have such a health thing come up, and the whole thing goes like, why am I even doing this, right?
Exactly. And I will say to those of you who are like about to go up for tenure, I was about to go up for tenure, and I didn't care if I got tenure or not by that point, because it didn't matter. It wasn't one of the things in my life that mattered anymore. But I gotta say, I created the best dossier. Like my narratives were better than they'd ever been. My committee was so impressed. Like I had to make very few revisions. I got tenure pretty easily. And it was not caring as much and just sort of speaking from my heart when I wrote out my narrative. And so I just want to be really clear that you can have a really successful academic career without pushing yourself, right? And that's exactly what I did not do when I went up for tenure. I did not push myself, probably for the first time in my career.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you mentioned this connection piece that's you were missing, and when it hit you during a faculty meeting that you don't want to be an academic anymore and you want to be a coach, I can so relate to that. That was also one of the main reasons that I said, okay, this is not for me. I don't want to live like me, myself, and my computer, looking at the screen, analyzing data, like, I don't know, saying stuff. I don't know who is listening. I want to be with real people, solving real people's real problems, or at least help them solve it themselves. Let's put it that way. That kind of connection. I think many academics are missing that. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And another thing that you mentioned is that at that time, you didn't have the capacity to take care of yourself. And that brought this question in my mind, like, is it like, yeah, how do you care for yourself? Did you even know how to care for yourself? I mean, besides having the capacity or not, to be very, very honest, the work addiction I can also relate to, and it is still ongoing for me. I think this work is lifelong for many of us. And although I am also helping academics to get out of that work addiction and to care for themselves and all, it's constantly a work that I need to do. So let me ask you, as a coach, how do you care for yourself as an academic, or as just a person? And how do you know what to do?
So this goes back to the coaching work I do with clients. I do the same thing for myself. I'm always trying to regulate my nervous system. So before this call, people don't know this, but before this call, I had like a tough morning. And so we got on, Ozgun and I had gotten on, and I was like, do you mind if we meditate really quick? Because that was a way to bring myself down. Oh, shoot, my phone's ringing. I'm so sorry. I don't even know where it is.
No problem at all. Okay, welcome back, Danielle. And we were talking about self-care and taking care of ourselves.
Yes, and the whole thing this morning where the two of us meditated together. This is something that I try to do regularly now. I check in with myself all the time. Like, I'm talking several times a day. And I'm like, how am I doing? Am I in fight flight? Am I in freeze? Like, what do I need to do to nourish my nervous system? And that has been huge, because before, like I said, I would just be my heart thumping all the time, a lot of anxiety, and I would just keep moving through my day, and not take any space to have those little moments of witness to what was going on with me. And so that is the main thing I do. And it is a lot of commitment. It's a lot of discipline. And it is so much better. Life is so much better now because I do it. Whew, so much better. And I'm not saying I do it all the time. There are days that I just like forgot. right? And I'll be like, oh, I got in fight flight, and the whole day I just kind of stayed there, and I feel terrible. And I recognize that I feel terrible, and I'll be like, what did I do differently? Oh, I didn't check in all day. That's what I did differently.
Yeah. But perfection is never the goal anymore.
No.
So it's okay. We are human beings. We forget things, and sometimes we indulge in certain emotions that we know that they're not really productive for us, doing anything good for us, but we're like, yeah, but
it's that addiction to work. It's just, you cannot not do it. And it feels like and now that I really notice what my nervous system is doing, I can feel a real pull in my chest that is just urging me to work. Come on, work. And I can't like break it. And I will have this witness inside of me that's like, Danielle, you see what you're doing, right? And I still will tell her to be quiet because I'm working, right? And so like breaking that addictive sort of sensation, that bodily sensation it's really hard work, but man, does it pay off. It feels so good when you're like, no, I'm going to stop this now because I can't do it right now. My body needs something else. And I will tell you, inevitably, like yesterday, I went for a walk. I was like, I'm going to go for a walk. And even though, my mind and my work addictive way wanted to keep working, I was like, no, I'm going for a walk. I could feel that's what my body needed. I go for a walk, and what happens? I just have all these great ideas.
yeah.
And I get back and do the work that I was working on before, and it flows so much easier. It quickly flows out of me. I actually complete the project. And that is not something that would ever have happened to me before. Like work was always a grind and hard and so much self-pressure. And it doesn't have to be like that. I promise you, to the listeners out there, it does not have to be like that.
Oh, definitely, totally. And for many people, taking the time off to have like a short walk, or to close your eyes for a bit, like checking in with yourself, or processing emotions that are coming up, or planning, they all sound like, yeah, no, that's a waste of time. I should just go for it and just do the thing. But no, the work that you produce is not directly correlated with the time you spend on it and with the grind that you put into it. There's a better way, there's an easier way,
100%. And I will say, I was not a very productive academic. And you would think I was because of how addicted I was. I was not. I did not produce much at all. And I was always pushing to get things done, and they wouldn't go anywhere. Or, I would stop a project and then try something else. And it was just such an inefficient, terrible way to work. I was never in the flow, ever. And again, nervous system, right? I was in fight flight the whole time. When you're in fight flight, you can't be creative. You can't be connected to yourself. You cannot be connected to your ideas. You can't be connected to other people, because, by the way, other people will also bring good ideas to your work. And, when we've sort of sworn off other people because we need to work, that's not helpful. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's a great intro to the next question I have for you, because I know that you work mainly with nervous system. So this mind-body work that you do with academics, guiding them through their career. So you help them regulate or re-regulate their nervous system. But first I want to ask you, like, what throws our balance off? How do we become dysregulated in the first place? And then we need this work to come back to a more regulated nervous system. And maybe for the people who don't know, we can talk a bit more about this, the fight, flight, and freeze, and the social connected, and the rest digest thing. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so I do polyvagal informed coaching. So it's based on polyvagal theory, and sort of it's like a hierarchy. So at the top is your connected, calm place. You feel social in this place. You feel like caring for yourself too, right? You're connected to yourself, you're connected to other people. Like actually caring for yourself is something you want to do. So I'll just say to listeners out there, if you're going through your semester and you never feel like caring for yourself, that's a good sign you're not in that nice, calm, connected state. But
Exactly.
then
Well,
going
that's
down, oh, go ahead.
you need to care for yourself in order to also to survive, right? It comes as a result of the willingness to survive and beyond survive, thrive in the world, because we also have that instinct, right?
100%. Yes. And you really feel you want to do that for yourself when you feel connected.
Yeah.
But then when you go down to the next sort of rung of the hierarchy, that's when you're in fight flight. And we're all going to go through these, like, because the bottom one is freeze. And of course, like I go into fight flight. I was in fight flight this morning. But then I can bring myself back up, right? And so what happens to academics is we stay in fight flight for way, 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 way too long, right? It's this like energy of, I think I've used the words self-pressure and pushing. And one of the things I used to do is I'd be on campus and I would seriously look down the hall to make sure nobody was coming down the hall who'd want to talk to me if I wanted to hurry and go to the bathroom and then come back to my office and continue to work. And so that's very flight energy, right? Like I'm trying to avoid people so that I can work. So anyway, if you're in this fight flight place and you stay there too long, which is what I did, at some point your mind body system is like, I can't do this anymore. And you dip into freeze. And that's when you're in total shutdown. This is burnout, at least the way I experienced burnout. Yeah. Just this, like, I cannot, and I always use the example of I could not lift my head to send an email. I could not do anything when I got to that point. So this is sort of the work I'm doing. I'm trying to get people to recognize when they're in that fight flight state so that they don't move into freeze. But if they are into freeze, right, like let's figure out what ways we can nourish your system so you can get back to that calm, connected place. And actually, even if you got back to fight flight, that would be a little bit of an improvement.
Exactly, right? Because at least then you have let's take the example of fleeing from a tiger that's chasing you. At least you're not like shut down waiting for your death to be as painless as possible. You have the energy again to start running away from the tiger. Even that's an improvement.
Exactly. Exactly. And so that's what I try to do. I try to get my clients to recognize that. And it's really hard when you are constantly in fight flight to have to stop and connect to yourself and think about like what the sensations are in your body. And what I'll often do is I'll have them send me voice memos. This is how I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling panicked or I'm feeling whatever. And this is how it's showing up in my body. But just that little check-in is going to make such a big difference. And especially if you're doing it all the time. Right.
Exactly. I'm also trying to do similar work with my clients and starting from feeling the feelings in their body, the physical sensations, those visceral, like the heat, cold in the body. Oh, where am I sitting? How does it feel? Is it soft, hard? And then the emotions that we have. Okay, is it panic? Is it fear? What degree of fear is it? And even that is so difficult for many of us because we are used to living so disconnected from all of that, because feeling all of that means that, we need to stop working, right? We need to just tend to ourselves and we just say, okay, I don't have time for these emotions right now to deal with my fear or anxiety or whatever. Just go until it breaks. And that's the moment of burnout. The maybe for some people it's the intersection of fight, flight, and freeze. For some people it is the freeze. But it's definitely a terrible place to be.
And I mean, I think you said it when you said, I don't have time. I don't have time. That was always my thing. Like, I was so afraid of time. I've got to keep going because I don't have time to not. Like, really. And I would say to listeners, what is the worst that could happen, honestly, if you don't get this thing done in the next 2 minutes, the 2 minutes it's going to take you to check in with yourself? Like, what's really going to happen? Do you really not have time?
Yeah.
It's not true. You do have time, 100%.
Yeah. I think we use the time excuse a lot because the most important thing is that you said this in the beginning, like before all of these things happened and before the cancer diagnosis and everything, you're like, okay, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. And then once you get the diagnosis and you have to face your mortality, that's when the time becomes a question, right? And then that moment where time came as this like real potentially limited thing, and the result it had in your life, like bringing you on the other side, complete 180-degree turn,
Yes,
where you had the time now to go in. That's so mind-boggling, I must say.
Yeah. And one of the things I would say to people, just based on my experience, is if you knew you were going to die tomorrow, what would you regret? Right? And that's when you're really going to find your values. That's really where they lie. Like, are you happy living your life as it is? You'll know if you really imagine what it's going to feel like to die, to know you're going to die tomorrow. Then you'll know if you're really happy with your life or not.
Yeah. So important. But okay, I don't want to like sound like an ass. I need to put this as explicit language podcast
In this episode.
But to tell the truth, some people are angry at me when I mention burnout being a gift depending on the way you look at it. So I see it like that now. What happened to me, I'm grateful for the experience. Otherwise, I just wouldn't stop. I would just be this unhappy person doing those things and not become this version of myself. So knowing that you went through burnout and a cancer diagnosis and also all of those surgeries and everything. Yeah, what do you think when you look back? Like, what are your thoughts or takeaways from it? Like, do you have, yeah, damn it, it was terrible time, like in form of resentment or regret, or like, yeah, I don't want to look at it at all? Or is it, okay, but it brought me so much, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think of it as a gift in the same way. And I have gotten to the point where I can feel compassion for that woman who was going through all of that and didn't know how to handle it. And that's a big deal, to be able to look at her and all the challenges she brought to my life, right? Yeah. And say, you were doing your best. You thought you were supposed to do it this way. And, that's okay. I still love you. I still am so glad you did the good work to become who you are now. Right? That feels really powerful to me.
Yeah. And I was wondering, did you have a coach at that time?
I did.
Through these.
During the cancer diagnosis, I did.
And did it help you, like, clarifying your thoughts about becoming a coach yourself? Or like, I do believe that everyone needs a coach, actually. I definitely get coaching regularly. Yeah. So that's I totally believe in what I'm doing, so I do it too. And I was wondering, like, how you experienced coaching yourself?
I guess I used coaching to deal with the cancer diagnosis, to sort of hold myself in a kind, compassionate way so that I could go to the doctor's appointments, so that I could hear the news, so that I could, it was just like somebody to sort of hold my hand and hear me while I suffered through this really, really difficult time. That's how I experienced it. And I think that's kind of how I see coaching, right? It's like somebody, a coach, will open up space for you so that you can speak. And if you speak from a fight flight state, let me say it that way, your coach will advocate for the wisdom that's within you that you haven't let come out yet. So that's kind of how I see it. And I think that's what the coaching did for me. Like, I could kind of accept that if I have to die, if this has to get really bad, it was sort of in the cards, and I can accept that and be like, this was the human journey for me. And so coming out of the fight flight and not, because everybody talks about fighting cancer. But what if you just sort of calmly and curiously watch what happens and, soak up the lessons as they come to you.
Yeah, that's so important. We can't repeat that enough, right? Like curiosity over judgment, curiosity over beating yourself up, curiosity over, being disappointed in yourself or being angry at yourself. Yeah. So important. Thank you. And one last question I have for you. Actually, I did ask this in private previous time we talked, but I want the listeners also to hear about this. The reason why you named your podcast and your work Self-Compassionate Professor, and the idea and the concept of compassion behind it. And to be honest, when I first came across your podcast, and that was before I became a coach myself, I started practicing coaching. Like, self-compassionate professor, it's kind of like oxymoron. So I really love the way that you use the word compassion there. And it's like in your face, it's compassion. Okay. It's a very good reminder, even to see the name of the podcast and your website. Even that one word always makes me go like, yeah, I'd forgotten about that.
You know what this is making me think of? I don't know if you do this. I know a lot of coaches do this, and a lot of them have their clients do this, but that, like, the New Year word. So my New Year word is home. How can I feel more at home in my body? How can I feel more at home in my home? How can I feel more at home in the relationships with my family? And so I'm thinking, Self-Compassionate Professor, when I first named it, I felt good with it, but then I got away from it, and I was like, I don't want it. Maybe that's not what I want. I feel like maybe that's not a good name for my podcast, a good name for my company. Maybe I don't want to do that. But that was me pushing myself away, right? Like, this self-compassionate professor, this is the kind of professor I wish I had been. And so there's something about that word, or that term, I guess I should say, that feels like home to me. Self-compassionate professor. It's possible to be in academia and hold yourself and be kind to yourself and do things for yourself so that you can show up for other people and live a life that you love and are proud of. What would I say about, I'm just trying to think more about the home piece. I guess just that self-compassion for me feels like home, but people need to think about what feels like home for them. Right. And if it's not, not that I don't think everybody needs self-compassion, because they do. What I am saying, though, is that don't run away from yourself because you believe that society wants you to do something else, because you believe that you should keep up with those people over there, right? Like, I should be an academic. That was always my thing. I should be an academic because I want to keep up with those academics over there. Once I came home, and self-compassion was very much the entryway for me to come home to myself, that's when I wanted to be a coach, right? It's when I stopped caring what other people think. And honestly, when you say you're a coach, like, let's be honest, people are like, what? That's just crap. What is it even a coach anyway, right? And so you have to be really strong in yourself and feel really clear about who you are and what you want out of your life to announce that you're a coach. I mean, you really do. Yeah. And it could be, and I would say for listeners, it could be anything for you, you know, maybe you want to, you know, pursue this certain career that your family does not like, is not impressed with. And, you know, maybe you want to be a pastry chef and you've been, you know, a scientist. And I would just say, like, what is home to you? What feels right to you? And I guess going back to the self-compassion piece, if you use self-compassion, you might be able to find a sort of a way to your home, in not in an easy way. It's not going to be easy, but in a way that at least allows you to live the life that you want. Yeah. I don't know if I made sense at the end, but there you go.
Oh yeah, you did. It really touched me the way you explained it. Thank you so much for your openness, your compassion towards yourself and to other people and to people that you're helping. And that's so needed in this world, in today's world. Thank you for doing this work. Thank you for doing your podcast.
My pleasure.
Thank you for teaching us how else we can do academia, right? And and thank you so much for coming on to this podcast. But before we go away, I want to ask you, like, how can listeners find you if they want to find you, and what is your last message to them?
Okay, I would say in last message to them, check in with yourself. How do you feel in your life? What is the climate of your life? Like, is there a word that describes the climate of your life? Because I know back in the day, my word would have been anxious. So what is that thing that describes how you feel on a regular basis? And if you don't know, keep checking in, see what you can find. And if you are interested in doing, I could do a one-to-one consult. If you're interested in just like a 20 minutes chat to see if we're a good fit to work together, to see if it is indeed about nervous system regulation for you, find me. I'm at selfcompassionateprofessor.com. So yeah, you can just schedule a consult on the welcome page.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Danielle. And
thank you.
Let's continue the conversation another time. This was so much fun. So great to have you on the podcast, and hopefully see you next time.
Yes.
Yeah. Bye.